Hey, thanks for tuning into my podcast. This is Big Head on the Block, hosted by me, Tim Henderson, aka Big Head. Welcome back, listeners. Today, we're going to end with part 3 of the hunt, the interrogation, and incarceration of a serial killer. I have in studio with me again today, retired homicide detective John Norwood. Welcome back, Norwood.
Thank you, Tim, once again for having me. Glad to be here.
So let's do a quick recap. We've identified forensically that Sean Vincent Gillis is the perpetrator of many crimes that were involving high-risk women. We told the listeners that another serial killer during the span of this investigation was also captured and is incarcerated at the time.
That's right.
So Sean Vincent Gillis is in an interview room because y'all arrested him. And let's start off from the night that he was arrested. Somewhere in the wee morning hours, around 1 a.m., 1:30 a.m., y'all had him in the interview room.
Yeah.
Tell us from that point on how the interrogation progressed.
Okay. Well, I was one of many detectives who were either present during the interview interrogation of Sean Vincent Gillis or either actively interviewing and interrogating him.
What was his demeanor like when y'all had him, initially when y'all had him in the interview room, the first 15, 30 minutes, say?
Initially, he led us to believe that he had no earthly idea why we would come to his house at the wee hours of the morning, break down his door, flashbang his house, and handcuff him and bring him down to the sheriff department. He's like, guys, what is the deal?
So basically he's playing cat and mouse game with y'all, and he's not more to admit anything.
Yeah, and watch this, Tim. That's typical of most perpetrators. They will deny until such time that an investigator shows them some type of evidence that leads them to believe that the gig is up. You got me. But that doesn't happen initially. So it certainly didn't happen initially with Sean.
And he was actually in custody under arrest. So y'all had already established probable cause and had the search warrant. So y'all knew what he had done. It's just a fact of trying to get him to cooperate and actually cooperate with y'all during the interrogation.
So initially, as you know, as in all cases, before a suspect even begin to open his mouth to us about anything, we are by law required to give them their Miranda rights, and we certainly gave Sean his Miranda rights before
everybody. I didn't mean to interrupt you. Everybody, Miranda rights are basically you have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in the court of law. The same thing you hear on TV. So
that's right.
By law, we have to give people their rights so they don't self-incriminate themselves without having the ability to seek an attorney.
That's right.
Sorry for the interruption. I just kind of want to let our listeners know.
And once Sean had his Miranda rights, he certainly said he understood him. He signed a waiver saying, hey, I'll talk to you guys because I'm curious to know what it is all about. And so one of the first things before a detective with a suspect or a perpetrator in an interview interrogation, we are taught that before we go into I guess you can say the allegations of the case, we simply start off by building rapport with the person we are interviewing or interrogating.
So let me go back and make a point here. You said that Sean Vincent Gillis signed a waiver.
That's right.
For those listeners, the Supreme Court doesn't mandate that you give them written communication that you're giving them their Miranda rights. That's something that is utilized as an investigative technique, and you could correct me if I'm wrong, to further establish not only did you give him his Miranda rights, but he signed acknowledging this. So now you have him verbally and you have it in writing, which will enhance the case if he says, I was never given my rights.
That's exactly right. Yeah,
okay.
It's solidified on both sides. So
building rapport.
So the rapport building process began, and if memory serves me, I believe initially it was I want to say at the time it was Captain or either Lieutenant Brian White did the initial contact rapport building with Sean. Just asking him questions about his background and what were the things he's accomplished in life, and also what were the things he was interested in doing? What has he been doing? And so, and one thing we learned as detectives about people, people love to talk about themselves.
Right.
So we allowed him to give us his attributes, his things that he loved. Obviously, from my previous podcast, that he was a Trekkie, so
right.
He loves Star Trek. So anyway, and of course, so he talked about himself quite a bit, and also if there's ever an opportunity for a detective during the rapport building process to have some common interest, then it's always a good thing.
Always a good thing. That's correct.
Thing. So because that kind of makes them feel relaxed and feel kind of like at ease, and so and more and less reluctant to talk to you.
So interrogation to me has always been, you build rapport, you are constantly analyzing what they're saying, their body, their movement, their facial expressions and everything. So you're reading him to see the best avenue to approach him.
That's right.
As an interrogator. And for people who have never interrogated somebody, especially somebody that's fixing to potentially tell you something that's going to alter the course of their life forever, you have to have some kind of common interest, and you even may have to, lower yourself to their level.
You have to, yeah.
And say that you kind of understand. So it's interrogation is an art, it's a science, but it's also understanding human behavior and the human component of this particular interaction y'all having. Just kind of let our listeners know, because they see people being interrogated on TV and, the Perry Mason aspect or the Blue Bloods aspect, they tell all, but people don't just tell all quickly sometimes. No. Sometimes it takes hours and sometimes it takes days, right?
That's exactly right.
Back on point.
Yeah, and then in this case, it took hours and it took days for us to really begin to unravel the onion, so to speak, with our perpetrator, Sean Vincent Gillis. And so, and as time went on, we moved from the rapport building stage as detectives to now the accusing stage. But now, again, there has been a bridge that's been built. Now it's time to cross that bridge. And we begin to tell Sean, and I say we, I'm talking about because there was different detectives going in at different times. We began to tell Sean, we believe that based on evidence that we have collected from crime scenes, that you were at the scenes of these murders. Now, why would I say at the scenes? Well, one thing is you want to at least give that individual an opportunity to explain to you why would their DNA be at a crime scene.
Right. So you give them a lead in and you hope that they just respond one way or another saying, hey, I was there for these reasons, or I don't know what you're talking about.
Exactly right.
But you give them the opportunity to, without actually formulating additional questions, the opportunity to defend themselves. Because most people that are guilty of something initially are going to try and defend herself, or why is my DNA at these crime
That's
scenes?
right.
He'll give you an explanation.
Yeah, he would give it, and that's pretty much happens almost all of the time. A high percentage of the time, because of what they want to do is they want to put themselves in a position to perpetrate that they are helping you in your investigation.
Right.
And one thing that I've found to be true in all the cases, and I was in homicide for 16 years of my 30 years with the Baton Rouge Police Department, and I found that most of the time, and all perpetrators I've sat eyeball to eyeball with, kneecap to kneecap with, interviewing, interrogating them, that once they begin to talk, they can't help themselves. When they begin to lie, they're going to tell you a little bit of the truth in the lie.
Right.
And Sean began at some point to tell us a little bit of the truth in the lie.
And as trained investigators, y'all have a lot of the answers already, but y'all have to pay attention and sift through the bullshit, if you will, and keep these little things that he says. But more importantly than that, you can't overreact as an investigator. You just have to keep a calm, steady pace, right?
That's exactly right. One of the things that we have to always try and keep in mind, and as homicide detectives specifically, we have to be active listeners.
Right.
And what I mean by that is anything that your suspect is telling you, you have to make a note of it. And that could mean a mental note or a physical note.
Right.
I like taking physical notes when I'm doing interview interrogation, because I want to come back and ask that particular suspect about the things that he said. And remember, I told you there's always going to be, when they lie, there was going to be a little truth in the lie, because they have to give you something in order to have an explanation as to, you may have found my DNA there, but this is the reason why.
Right.
And so, and as Sean began to talk to us about some of the things that we're asking him about these particular scenes. One of the scenes I wanted, if memory called me, it was a Johnny May. I believe that was one of the women that we forensically linked him to, and we asked him about, well, any particular reason why your DNA would be at that crime scene. Well, he simply told us that, well, she was my girlfriend.
Okay.
Yeah.
So he's giving you a passive answer.
He's giving a passive answer. She was my girlfriend, and so that's the reason why you would probably have found my DNA on her or in a scene near her.
Right.
So, but he doesn't give us an explanation as to why she strangled to death and her hands were being cut off.
So he's giving you a little information, but he's still being coy.
Yes, exactly right. And so we take a little bit. Remember, this is interview interrogation is not a sprint; it is a marathon.
Right.
And so, and those who are given the duty of being an investigator have to be ready to sit and talk for hours.
Right.
In order to obtain the information that they're needing in order to allow this perpetrator to implicate themselves in the cases that you're investigating.
Right. And that's something that a lot of people, because a lot of things are based on, what they see in movies and TVs, it's very time consuming. I would say maybe 2 hours is about the length of an interrogation that I've had to go through. And unlike y'all, everybody that I interrogated just confessed, man. Made it easy on me, huh? So
try 8 hours. Try 8 hours. The longest I've been interrogated, along with another partner of mine, is 8 hour interrogation.
Yeah, that's baffling to me. I couldn't. I'd be out patrolling again or something. So anyway, let's get back. Y'all are interrogating him. He's giving you little pieces of information. He's kind of validating the reason his DNA is showing up in places.
That's right.
So at some point, you say that y'all's techniques have to evolve as the interrogation. You have to get a feel for what you need and how to attack him.
Yeah.
So,
well, it's a collaborating effort. It's collaborating between all other detectives who worked on this case. And look, let me tell you something. Nobody went home. All right. When I say I'm talking about guys from BRPD detectives, LSP detectives, EBR detectives, and everyone who had an interest. Nobody left that interrogation building where the interrogation was being where Sean was being interrogated.
Yeah, because
how it evolved. So we obviously there's usually only 2 detectives at the max in an interview room with the suspect. All right, that's by design.
And the rest are monitoring.
And the rest of us are monitoring on closed circuit TV. We called it closed circuit TV back then. And what's happening is the guys who are on the outside monitoring are chomping at the bits saying,
right,
hey, asking this question, but of course they're not yelling to the detectives, and so they're sending notes, and so everyone is on board and working this interview interrogation. And of course, you got a lot of smart guys, man, who've been doing this for years, and they know their work. They know their jobs. And so when they were sending suggestions, even the guys who were in the room interrogating are actively listening, and then the guys on the outside who are actively feeding them information to ask. So it began to break down all of the defenses that Sean had placed up to protect himself.
Okay. Yeah, because I know most of the detectives that handle that case, and man, there's some really bright people and some really expert interrogators, and I commend y'all, for even getting to the point where y'all are now starting to see a transition in his mood. And so let's just explain this to the listeners. You have a lot of cops, and nobody thinks the same. Everybody thinks different.
That's right.
So you're interrogating. Your method of interrogation may be a little different than mine.
That's right.
And questions are popping up in my mind saying, John asked this, John asked this. Well,
right.
John may not ask this because he's on a different path. So it's important that from the peripheral, people that are watching have a way to convey these questions, because it helps the person interrogating, because obviously, you can't think of everything at the moment because you're kind of focused on trying to get a confession, which is what you're really trying to do.
Exactly.
So the extra help and the questions, it's just a bunch of people with a lot of knowledge and a lot of experience trying to help get this guy to confess, which is why everybody called their spouses or had other people pick their kids up, because I don't care who you are, ain't no cop leaving that room that day. You're not going to be the first one to go home.
No, that did not happen.
Yeah.
And let me tell you, and the good news is that it paid off, because what we ultimately discovered, Tim, was that through all of the interview interrogation process and all of the minds who were working this case simultaneously, working this interview process simultaneously, even or either in the room with Sean or outside looking from the closed circuit TV or the camera, we came to one conclusion as a team, and that was Sean was a small guy with a big ego.
Okay.
All right. What do I mean? Physically, Sean he's a small guy. He's not much taller than 5'6", something like that.
Right.
So anyway, but his ego was huge, because at some point during the interview interrogation, one of the detectives mentioned to him, man, you must be a pretty smart guy, because we saw all the books that were, in your house when we, when we entered your house. So these books, we had medical books. He had, other things. And so when that happened, someone noticed and said, "Wait a minute! When you told him how smart he is, he perked up."
Yeah.
Hey, oh yeah, yeah. Well, and he began to talk really fervent about his education or his things he's accomplished. So we knew we struck a hot button, and so now when there were when we would give him we said, "Look, maybe Sean, you want to take a little bathroom break, get some coffee." He said, "Sure." So we allowed him to be taken to the bathroom to get get the bathroom and get a coffee break while we came together. We say, "Look, guys, this is the ticket for this guy," and we got to now begin to talk to him about all of his accomplishments, the things that his attributes, how smart he is, how someone with lesser intelligence would not have gotten away with these things we believe you've gotten away with.
So collectively, y'all all took your shot at him.
That's right.
And then y'all figured out a soft spot and
that's right.
A way to attack him.
That's right.
That feeds his ego.
That's right.
At that point in time, y'all let him take a break, brought him back in. Mm-hmm. Do you remember by chance who was talking to him at the time?
If memory serves me, I want to say it probably was Brian White, because Brian White did a great deal of the interview interrogation, and he did an awesome job on doing so.
So now you know he has an ego.
That's right.
And just remember, there was another serial killer that was getting a whole lot of attention, and to this day still gets more attention for the most part than Sean Vincent Gillis was, and that's Derek Todd Lee. So
that's right.
Now y'all are pumping his ego up as an as an interrogation technique.
That's right.
Out of curiosity, did he ever mention anything about Derek Todd Lee?
Well, yes, he did. Well, indirectly, and this is what I remember, because I actually was in the interrogation room on this particular note at this particular time. So Sean said that he called his going out in the middle of the night looking for victims, quote, hunting, unquote.
Okay.
And he said one night, he said that he passed what he believed to be another hunter or somewhere. He didn't say exactly where the encounter took place. I don't know if it was in a parking lot of a store or in a whatever it was an encounter. He said, Detective, he told me, he said, Detective Norwood, one night I was out hunting and I encountered another hunter just as I.
Wow.
I say, Sean, how did you determine that? What made you think? He said, because we passed each other in the middle of the night. Don't know if he said it was the look in his eye. He said, and I guess another serial killer knows another serial killer.
Yeah.
But anyway, he said it was a look in his eye. I said, did you say anything to him? He said, we never spoke a word, but I knew based on the look that he was a hunter as I was.
That's a animal.
Animal instinct, I guess.
Yeah, animal instinct dealing with another animal.
Yeah.
So y'all playing on his ego.
Yeah.
The Derek Todd Lee thing was just something that I was curious about. So
and he didn't mention Derek Todd Lee.
Right,
Derek
he just mentioned.
He just mentioned.
I just was wondering if his ego was kind of tapered down a little bit. He may have wanted. I'm thinking because, I'm sure serial killers that do this want to be known or have some prestige compared to another one. So now he's in direct competition with another serial killer. So how do y'all play on his ego?
Well, how we play on his ego is again, we now as I say, I believe the bulk of that interview process came through Brian White and from the EBRSO, and he began to again make connection with him, Sean, and his high level of intelligence. And Sean, we could see the ego rising in him. Yeah, and as the more he was told how smart he was and how lesser intelligent men would not have even gotten away with anything remotely the things that we see in this case that we believe that you possibly committed. And that began to feed, it began to grow. And some point, there was a breaking point. And Sean said, okay, guys, let me tell you. And all eyes were open and all ears were perked. And he began telling us about the case, the cases that we had been accusing of all the time for several hours. And he began to tell us, he said, well, you're right. You're absolutely right. I did do this particular case. And he mentioned cases by name. And he just began going through a litany of things that he did in these cases that now we are solidifying from his own mouth to our ears in an interview room on tape that he's responsible for the deaths of these women.
So initially, y'all were talking to him about 3 different women that were forensically linked to him.
That's right.
During the interrogation, once he started spilling the beans or telling y'all what y'all needed to know to enhance the case, did he ever admit to other women that he killed that y'all didn't know about?
Yeah, and one in particular was a really shock and awe for all of us. I'm talking about from every agency, BRPD, LSP, and EBRSO. There was a young lady, a lady, middle-aged lady who was disappeared from her neighborhood. Her name was Hardy Smith, and she was a jogger, and she went missing from a morning jog from Pollard Estates. Pollard Estates is a very affluent neighborhood in a very nice area.
Right.
And so they enjoy very low crime, and there certainly were no, seemingly high-risk victims living in Pollard Estates.
Right.
So as he began to tell us, now the floodgates are opening, and he's beginning to tell us about these cases. And as he began to tell us, it was a pause in his statement, and he's about one of the cases. He said, "Oh, by the way, that lady, Hardy Smith, from Pollard Estates," he said, "I killed her too." And
I bet you that raised some eyebrows.
About knocked us off of our chairs when he said that, because I remember I was in the detective division at the time when that case came to us. It was initially, it was our case. I'll say our BRPD homicide detectives,
right?
Detective Willie Vick and Ron Coward actually worked that case, and to those guys' credit, those guys worked that case as hard as any detective would ever work a case.
I remember that case specifically because when that abduction, if you will, we'll call it an abduction.
Right.
Obviously, now we know it's a killing, but the people in the area were so alarmed that I was in uniform patrol in 2nd District. For many days, they put 2 on-duty units in Pollard Estates to ride around. It's not a really huge neighborhood, so spending 10 hours in there is very tedious. But they put us on 24-hour rotation, 2-person security.
Yeah.
I don't know if it was 3 or 4 days in a row because it kind of caught everybody off guard. And being that she was a jogger,
that's right,
it had a lot of people scared. So
A lot of people scared.
you know, it was a high profile case at the time.
Yeah, it got a lot of attention. And so, as I said, that those detectives worked that case as hard as they possibly could, and never, ever developed nowhere near any circumstantial evidence or physical evidence that led to Sean Vincent Gillis.
Yeah, that would have been a really hard one to solve and to attribute to him for sure. So he told y'all that he killed her. Give me a brief description, or go as in detail as you need, as to how he did it and what manner of death. What was the actual cause of death?
Okay. Well, one of the things, and this is for all of your listeners, I guess an education, if you will. This guy came into the neighborhood, Sean Vincent Gillis, one morning, and just began riding in the neighborhood, and he was an unknown, and so at some point, Miss Hardy Smith, who was a jogger, saw him, and automatically, at some point throughout a period of time after he come in the neighborhood so often, assumed he was a friendly face, and he possibly, and from his own mind, from his own mouth, said she possibly thought I was a resident.
Right.
So, for caution for especially the women out there, if you are seeing unfamiliar individuals who are in and around your neighborhoods, even though they may look friendly, they may not be the friendly face. And take the time out, especially you're unfamiliar, to take note of information about vehicles. If you get license plate numbers, don't be afraid to call your local police department and report, hey, I saw a suspicious vehicle. It's not normally in my neighborhood. I don't know who this person is, but I saw him riding on several occasions.
Right.
If nothing else, allow the police to do their job.
Right.
And check it out.
So she was jogging.
Yeah.
I don't know if you said this, but if you didn't, I think they exchanged waves with each other.
Yeah.
Right.
So Sean Vincent Gillis, and this is from his own mouth to our ears. He gave us a statement after he told us that he was responsible for her death. And in his statement, and I'll just paraphrase some of the things he said. He said that the first day I rode through the neighborhood of Pollard Estates, it was a Sunday morning. He said, I remember. And he said, I was not there for any particular reason, just riding. He was after a night of hunting. All right. It's early in the morning. He's riding, and he sees this blonde, nice looking lady jogging in this neighborhood. And he said it caught his attention. So he rode in, and he sort of kind of rode around, and he observed her for a period of time. And so he just thought she was a very attractive lady, not thinking anything initially. Well, he just thought, of course, in his own mind, he's telling us his story. He say, I thought I would just see her and maybe come back in the neighborhood, and by happenstance, I'll see her again. So he would leave he left the neighborhood, obviously, but he returned back on several days later. And lo and behold, he spotted her once again. Because he's a night owl, he's up early. He's up all night and early in the morning.
Right.
He goes home. I guess.
And she's just a daily jogger.
And she's a jogger. What's significant about her jog was her jog was according to what he saw, and he sort of kind of what we call cased, was that she was an early morning jogger.
Right.
Sometime between the hours of 5:30 in the morning. Low light, low visibility, less people out moving around, but there she is. She's out jogging by herself, and he said he took note of that, and so he took it upon himself to come back on several occasions. At which time he say, I established a pattern. I knew on Sunday mornings, between 5 and 5:30, this lady who I did not know would be jogging in the neighborhood of Pollard Estates.
Wow.
And so he said that he would come back routinely and ride by and wave at her. And she, at some point, according to his own statement, would wave back at him.
Right, just casual wave.
Just casual wave. And
thinking, like he said, it might be.
And he said, he told us, he said, I believe that seemingly she would have thought that I was a resident in her neighborhood, as much as now he's showing up in her neighborhood.
Right. She's seen him consistently, and the more she sees him, the
more comfortable, she would have gotten with this particular person riding through a neighborhood. So, and he said on one particular morning, Sunday morning, as usual, he came in the neighborhood, and there she was. She was jogging. He waved at her like usual. And as he passed her by, they were going in opposite directions, he waved and she waved back. And he said as he went down toward the adjacent street, something clicked on the inside of him. Sean called it something a monster.
Monster.
He said a monster clicked on the inside of me. And he said he made a U-turn. And he came back toward, now he's no longer going the opposite direction. He's going in the same direction. And essentially he's following her in his vehicle. Now he's keeping a distance, not to be so close upon her, according to his own statement. But he said at some point, as he looked around, again, it's early morning hours, no one else is moving around. He say, now was the day. He say, now this is the day she will become my victim. And he said what he did was, as he drove behind her slowly, he simply accelerated to the side of the street where she was jogging. And as he accelerated, he struck her by a glancing blow with his vehicle, and he knocked her in the ditch. Once she fell in the ditch, he said he observed her. She almost like she lost consciousness was just a very short time, like she laid there. And then he went over as if he was going to give first aid. And he said when he did, the monster who had clicked inside of him knew that this was the day. And so even as she was regaining consciousness, began to move and began to, saying, someone hit me, he immediately had the weapon of choice that he used, the zip tie. And he simply said he simply put the zip tie on her neck, zipped, he made the sound, zip. And he then, he knew that was going to help make her lose consciousness. And so he simply then carried her, because she's not a big lady, carried her and placed her inside of his vehicle. And once she was inside his vehicle, he disappeared into the morning with her.
So he killed her. Did y'all ever find that body?
The body was found.
Okay, it was.
Yeah, the body was found. I want to say it was found in one of the nearby bayous. The body was in stages of decomposition, but she was partially decapitated.
Okay, yeah. So now he's giving you intricate details on something that caught y'all all out the blue.
That's right.
So at that point in time, y'all are getting all the confessions that you're needing. He's admitting to the crimes that y'all knew of, but he's also admitting to other crimes. So when y'all booked him, I'm guessing y'all booked him later that day or that morning, whatever the case may be.
He was certainly booked that morning. That's right. Some later on in the day, because this was an all-night marathon interrogation process.
Was he booked on the initial cases, or did y'all do the additional cases? Because I'm sure he gave you enough detail to give you probable cause on the other ones.
Well, we consulted with the DNA. With the DA's office.
Okay.
And one of the things that, and again, I wasn't present necessarily, to on all these meetings, but I was present in most meetings. And one of the things that was advised of us is that allow these cases to be prosecuted separately. And so we would certainly charge him with the cases that were forensically linked,
Okay.
in which initially he was arrested on, and then allow the other cases to come and be prosecuted.
Okay. So he was arrested, booked in jail on several counts of.
At least the first initial three.
Would it be first or second degree murder?
Well, it would have been first degree murder, because of the crime, how the crimes were committed, planned, premeditated.
Okay, so
with malice or forethought. So that's indicative of first degree murder.
Okay, so he was booked on multiple counts of first degree murder.
That's right.
He was placed in East Baton Rouge Parish Prison, and then y'all continued y'all's investigation to corroborate the things that he said with the information you knew. I'm sure y'all got with the other case detectives, and
that was the process, because he was telling us about cases that other detectives from within our jurisdictions were working. So now we could not, with good faith and good conscience, to charge him with the other murders, because we had other lead detectives who were intricately involved in those cases. So we had to come together and have meetings,
right,
to determine how we were going to proceed with the other cases involving Sean, because the case he told us he was involved in.
Right. So ultimately, y'all, in a joint effort,
that's right,
figured out a course of action to get details for the additional cases, collaborated with the DA.
That's right.
And y'all had a course of action planned to prosecute him. So
that's right.
At this point in time, he's in jail. Y'all still talking to him. Y'all getting all this information.
Mm-hmm. And one of the key points is that Sean never stopped talking. Once the floodgates were open, he was open to every and all times of talking with detectives about his escapades involving these murders.
Yeah, so he knew the gig was up, and he was wanting to get as much credit as he could, and have his name out there. Yeah. I'm guessing he took some prestige in that.
Yeah, well, it may have been the case, but I'm gonna tell you something, and this is the case about most killers that I've met in my 30+ year career, because I've worked many murder cases, that although these are murderers and perpetrators of murder, they themselves love their life. They don't want to give up their life.
Right.
And so what we found is that one of the reasons we believe that Sean was cooperating to a great degree, because he now knows the gig was up. There was a great chance that he would be going with a true bill of first-degree murder. First-degree murder carries the highest penalty, which is the death penalty. Sean, in his wisdom, wanted to do anything and all things to avoid the death penalty. Remember, Derek Todd Lee denied everything. He went through the trial process, was tried and found guilty of first-degree murder. Now he eventually, got the death row. But my point I'm making is, Sean, on the other hand, he wanted to evade first-degree murder and or the possibility of dying in prison altogether.
Right. So you have a killer who's okay taking lives, but at some point in time, he's going to use his own life to negotiate and to help y'all find bodies, find evidence and everything.
That's right.
To keep him alive, because he don't want to die.
He don't want to die.
He's okay killing people, but he's not okay with somebody taking his life.
Yeah.
That's pretty. That's a pretty unique stance.
It is.
So he started cooperating, or he actually had been cooperating, he continued cooperating in order to avoid the death sentence. So did y'all gain any more knowledge? Because he didn't go to trial on any of them, he
didn't go to trial. So in the cooperating process, we would take Sean out on what we referred to for him as field trips, so, but it wasn't fun field trips. Sean had actually taken victims from different places and killed them, and then from one place and then kill them and place them in other locations. So, and even his modus operandi, he began to try and change things up. If at some point in time he would take a victim from inside the city and ultimately kill her and dump her outside the city. So and so he actually was willing to and did go out and show us where he had abducted victims from, where he killed them, the location where he ultimately killed them, and then where he actually took their bodies and dumped their bodies. We knew, based on the crime scene investigation, where the bodies were dumped.
Right.
And that information, depending upon whether the case was not always public knowledge.
Right.
So when he took us out to locations, he said, "You found a body off the roadway on this location on this particular day," then we knew that beyond a shadow of a doubt that he had inside knowledge of why that body was there and how it was posed, and he described it to us to a T. So there was no doubt in our mind that he would have been either there when the murder took place, or simply put, he was responsible for the murder.
Right. So for those listeners who may not understand this concept, even though people tell you they committed a crime, you need something to, as an investigator, you need to have something that corroborates this. So take something elementary like a house break-in. There's 10 burglaries in a residential area. They kick in 5 doors and they break glasses on 5 houses. Mm-hmm. So whenever you're talking or interviewing and interrogating, and they're saying, "No, I did 10 burglaries." So as an investigator, you take them to these areas. Show me this house right here. That's the one you broke into? Yep. How did you get into it? I kicked in the back door.
That's right.
There's a report somewhere that reflects that the back door was kicked in here. Show me the next house. I broke the window on this one. Why didn't you kick in the back door? I tried to kick in the back door. There should be a footprint on it, but I had to go through the window because I couldn't kick it in.
That's right.
So it's important that you don't, especially in a serial killer, you don't want this serial killer telling you he killed 30 people and you attribute everything to him just because he said it.
No.
So you, as an investigator, you use the information that he gives you, and then you verify with the information that you know regarding the case.
That's right.
So it's an important component of taking a confession from somebody to make sure that, yes, he gave us details only he would know.
That's
so
right.
At that point in time, he's in jail. Y'all go on these field trips, as you call them. Mm-hmm. He's giving you all the insight. Y'all are eventually able to put multiple charges on him.
That's right.
To spare him the death penalty. I think he's in jail right now on 8 counts of murder, and I think that he has a life sentence. Is that what you remember?
I remember, yeah. One thing he did do, he evaded the death penalty by cooperating. I don't know the particulars of the details about the anything that was told to him, but I do know that eventually the death penalty was taken off the table for Sean Vincent Gillis.
And for those listeners who watch TV and may have a different vision of how this occurs, the police can't make deals like that. The police can only advise the district attorney about what this person is wanting to do, and ultimately the district attorney has the ultimate decision on whether the authority, the authority to say, yes, we'll allow him to tell us all the details of these homicides in lieu of the death penalty. So the police don't actually have the authority or power to do that.
That's right.
They can speak with the district attorney, and usually, you know, if a police agency goes to a district attorney and says, this is what we need, they're usually accommodating. So, you know, kudos to the district attorney for allowing that to happen, and some of these families to get closure on some of these, some of the details, and even probably found a body or two that maybe they wouldn't have discovered.
Yeah.
Well, look, John, you've given us some great insight over the last 3 portions of the hunt, the interrogation, and ultimately the incarceration of the serial killer. Sean Vincent Gillis is sitting in jail for the rest of his life on 8 homicides, thanks in part to you and the other men and women from Baton Rouge City Police, Louisiana State Police, East Baton Rouge Parish Sheriff Department, and whatever involvement the federal government had in it. So on behalf of the citizens, I thank you. And as a retired lieutenant also, that was some great work y'all did. And I think that people that are dedicated to the profession like you, you know, should be commended for putting these monsters in jail and keeping the community safe. Thanks for being in studio, John.
Well, thank you, Tim, for having me once again, sir.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Big Head on the Block. I'm Tim Henderson, the host. I look forward to dropping another podcast soon. Please give us any comments, likes, dislikes, or any topics y'all would like to discuss. Thank you.